may we invite on stage Mr. Philip Schatz, founder and managing director of Cube. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, Chris. Former boss, Jesus Christ, makes me sound so old, right? Anyway, all right, welcome everybody. Yeah, today I want to talk a little bit about what tech stack should we look at in hotels and hotel organizations. And that's a very simple question with very simple answers, right? That's why I feel, thanks to HSMAI, I got a total of 15 minutes to talk about this. When, it takes sometimes actually years to make decisions what you need, go through an RFP process, really implement, train people. And by the time it's done, you may have to look again, did I make the right decision? Because there's so much other stuff out there now. All right, so from tech stack to guest impact. So I really want to use this session not to talk too much about what are the actual solutions out there, because there is really a lot, but to bring the perspective back around the guest, because that's the business we're in, right? How does tech actually support to drive guest attention, to drive demand, and ultimately, of course, drive performance at what we want? So really, your tech stack is around the guest, and it should not just be sitting on a shelf that we look at. When I go to organizations, very often I see great tech in place, but it's heavily underutilized. And I often ask myself, why is that? Why has this not been fully embraced? So let's remind ourselves, we don't buy tech, we buy what's really out there for the guest and around the guest. And too often, we focus on systems. It's important to focus on usability, who is it for, but it's very internal often. And just want to remind ourselves that we have to go back to a bit of outside, and that's really the guest. So from outside to inside, what do we mean by that? So inside approach is, and we do that a lot in our industry, right? We talk a lot about, okay, what do we have to do? What's our processes? Who's in charge of what? What do we want to throw out to the world that people will come and buy? But not good enough any longer, right? We really have to be a bit more outside in. Think again, what do guests actually want? In the session before about luxury, I think we talked a lot about how do guests behave? How do they feel? What triggers them? So how do we get to this information, and then what do we do with it, and how do we surround this with the right technology and the right people that can actually drive it in the processes to make this all work? So I want us to look at the guest journey again. So this is Lucy, and Lucy's just dreaming about a destination, a next trip that she wants to do. And then this journey goes all the way to post-stay, right? But there's a lot of stuff in between. It's not just throw it out, guests will come, stay, and be happy. And that's really the end-to-end guest journey from, really figuring out what we need to communicate to guests so that in the research phase or in the find phase, they actually have relevant information, because that's the entry, right, that we need to focus on. And then all the way from, they book the stay, so pricing becomes important. Again, what tech do we need there? Then in stay, what can we use to actually, again, make the guest not just happy, that first, but at the same time, improve our commercial performance as well. And then post-stay, very often, this is forgotten. I see some degree of engagement, but it's probably not to where it could be and should be. So that's from a guest perspective, the guest journey and all these touch points. In a hotel, we need to turn this into the classical marketing funnel. And there's a lot of action that we need to do. And we need to really understand at each stage of this funnel, how can we stimulate demand? How can we increase guest happiness and at the same time make more money? And that's not a top secret, right? But take a bit of how do we take this hard sell out and make this emotional connection so that people want to spend more money on the right things that we offer to them. So the tech stack. It's massive, right? I mean, we have all of our wonderful sponsors here, but there's, of course, much more than our sponsors. And in each of these phases is different types of technology. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples. And as I said, I really don't want to go through this because that's a bit boring. But let's just go a little bit through these different phases now in that marketing funnel and what's happening in there. So before we do that, I want to say that it's actually not a stack. Technology should be looked as a bridge. It should be looked as a bridge that helps us to really connect systems, but connect it back with the guest journey. So your thinking has to be a bit different when it comes to that, right? So each tool, think through what is that bridge that it actually delivers to connect me with the guest. In Find, that's really the discovery game, right? If we don't get that right, we already have a much smaller amount of people that we can stimulate in the funnel. So it's really important, this phase. And sometimes we forget about that, how important it actually is to get the most relevant information out there to drive the right demand into that funnel entry. So again, what's the tech out there, right? Meta search, digital advertisement, search engines, customer data platforms. All of these play a very, very important role to drive that attention. And it's not always about the brand. Very often we see a lot of talking about the brand, but we're not really connecting it back to, okay, what is it standing for that's truly relevant to the guest? And how do I feed that into the technology to drive this attention? Talking about booking. So this is now from curiosity to commitment, getting people to actually purchase a good, right? So it must be seamless, it has to be fast, it has to be mobile first, and are we really making it easy for our guests to do that final step in that funnel and purchase something? And how can technology, again, help us with that? And there's a couple of examples, right? And this is where you think central reservation systems do you have really the right solution that is relevant to your guests in that phase of the journey? And is it easy for them to actually make this purchase? During the stay, that's when it's about delivering this promise. But again, in this stay phase, there's still a lot of tools available that we could use and should use to truly engage with the guest. And not just from talking to people on a normal basis when they're in a hotel. It's about how can I really send relevant messages out to them again while they're staying with me? How can I encourage them to purchase more items while they're staying with me? And disconnected from the room, really, right? So what is out there and how do I get this attention? And what's the tech out there that not only helps me to drive business, but actually makes the guest feel truly recognized and truly engaged with? And then finally, we go into this grow phase or post-stay. This is where we want to turn our guests into repeat advocates. We want them to talk about us. We want them to think positive. We want them to share their experiences. And we want to really be engaged. So this is a two-way stream. Don't just leave it to the guests and encourage them to leave a review. What do you do to really be connected with them? So what is the guest relationship post-stay? Are we putting certain strategies in place to actually drive instant revenue again by engaging them, by getting them to book something else or book somewhere else in our ecosystem? And then do you really have a functioning feedback loop in place? And a feedback loop does not just mean send them a survey or look at their reviews. Feedback loop means how do you engage and interact with them on a very personal level, and what's the technology out there? And there's a couple of examples, of course, out there that I've listed here. Yeah, so just 5 questions I thought I'd leave with you to ask before you buy any technology. And that is, what part of the journey does it support? And if it doesn't support a part of the journey, rethink it. And if it does support and you know it, who's in charge of it in the team to drive it? What is the cost versus the guest value? So don't overspend, but at the same time don't underspend. Again, bring this guest perspective back into the equation. Will your team use it well? I said that earlier. There's a lot of technology, probably in some of your organizations as well, and it's underutilized. So what can I do? Do I really have everything in place that helps my team to use it to its full capacity, or at least to an increased capacity, so that that the owner, who pays for it very often, gets the money back as well? Does it integrate easily? Is it a system that talks to your other systems, or is it a standalone that becomes very difficult to manage and may lose its true value, therefore? And then, again, does it drive the entire marketing funnel? And there are some solutions that sit in a very particular phase, and there are some solutions that are actually going through the entire marketing funnel. And again, what do they do there? How does it work? Integration and usability do matter. So when you talk to your technology providers, you have to have these questions ready. Does it integrate with everything else that I have? What's the cost affiliated with that? Because very often we get burned by these costs that we only uncover at a later stage. And usability means, think about your teams. Do they have the skill set that you need to drive this technology? And if not, can I uplift that skill set? Or do I need to bring another skill into the organization, which is entirely possible and legitimate? And a tool unused is just wasted, right? You just burned money for no reason. And that's sad. So it's not about the tech, it's about the guest. The best tech is actually invisible. You don't really see it. As a guest, you don't want to be really enthused by it, right? And it empowers your team to really delight your guest, drive guest happiness and satisfaction, but at the same time also drive your business. Thank you very much.